An ecosystem consists of communities of living organisms and abiotic components of the environment, all which interact with one another constantly. An ecosystem is defined as balance when all of the living and non-living components are in sustainable harmony. However, ecosystems are complex in their nature, and there are many factors which can cause an imbalance within an ecosystem. These can include environmental changes such as drought, flooding, and bushfires. An ecosystem can be thrown out of balance through the destruction of habitat by human urbanisation or the overabundance of introduced pest species which dominate over natives within an ecosystem.
The Indian Myna has now been labelled a pest within the eastern Melbourne region. In a general sense, how does an animal become defined as a pest?
Good question. So generally, a pest species is something that's really, really complex, and it's focused on whether or not that particular species is seen to have a negative impact, whether that be a negative impact on the environment or a negative impact on humans more broadly.
The Indian Myna was introduced to the Melbourne region originally to control insects, but quickly began to dominate our skies, and is often described as the cane toad of the sky. It is one of only 3 birds in the top 100 of the world's most invasive species. It is identified by the brown body, black hooded head, and the bare yellow patch behind the eye. The bill and legs are also bright yellow.
The Indian Myna becomes successful in the Melbourne area?
One of the key things with Indian Mynas is they're known as what's called a super aggressive generalist. So super aggressive in the sense that they attack other bird species. And because in our urban environments we've removed a lot of habitat from those areas, they're just more successful exploiting that environment. So our native species need lots and lots of trees to be able to survive, whereas the Indian Mynas are more successful where there is fewer trees.
Yeah.
The Indian Myna displaces native birds by outcompeting them for food and nest resources. Many native birds, such as the eastern rosella, use the hollow cavities of trees for their nests and have been driven out by the Indian Myna. The Myna also utilises urban environments such as roof gutters for their nests, whereas native species only use trees. Since it takes 120 years for a tree to form a natural hollow for the natives, it presents a massive problem. The Indian Myna are also vectors for disease that our native honeyeaters cannot survive.
From your experience, are pest birds harder to manage than that of land pests? Why or why not?
100%. Birds present the challenge that they can fly, and this makes it really, really challenging, particularly because when we have pest birds, we also have native birds, and because both can fly, it's really hard to have a method that we can only target one particular species. So generally when we control these species, we have to be very labour intensive because we have to make sure we're only catching the species that we want to remove from a system, which presents lots of challenges.
Yeah.
Because it is hard to fully eradicate pests, the best thing we can do is try and manage local populations so they don't get out of control. Denying the Myna roosting access in tree hollows has been identified as the best population control method, rather than targeting them after they have already bred.
Myna population.
One of the big things I think we particularly need in urban areas, and it will help with Indian Mynas, but probably biodiversity more generally, is actually making sure that you plant native trees or indigenous trees in your backyards and your front yards, and making sure we conserve those areas as much as we can. Quite often we see backyards and those sorts of landscapes as non-habitat, but where we have continuous habitat in lots of people's backyards, we can actually start to support some of our native species better.
Community members can also log on to Myna Scan to see live population densities and to see if their area is being affected.